Well, folks, the 2028 presidential election might be 3.5 years away, but Democrats are laying the groundwork for a potential 2028 presidential run. The Democrats are using this time to build out the framework for their future campaigns to win the Democrat nomination and hopefully go on to the general election. We've seen it time and time again. Gavin Newsom starting to move to the middle on hot button issues, while Tim Walz is announcing that he's seriously considering this, even though he says he really doesn't want to. But anyways, we are going to be looking at who we expect to jump in this race and who's going to be best positioned to win the 2028 election. And that is going to start us off with our very own Kamala Harris. Now, we all know Kamala Harris. She was the 2024 nominee for half of the time, half of the race, and the vice president under Joe Biden. We know she replaced Biden at the top of the ticket after his horrible debate performance against President Trump in June of 2024. That was the day the mainstream media died. The mainstream media had been telling us for years, Biden is as sharp as he's ever been. He's doing handstands and cartwheels behind closed doors. And you know what he did? He went out onto that debate stage and laid the biggest turd on the mainstream media, and it has totally discredited them. It is probably the scandal that will bring down the mainstream media and has brought down the mainstream media. Now, in Kamala's campaign, she spent over $1 billion, close to $1.5 billion, to lose every single swing state. And she had some of the worst margins, honest to God, some of the worst margins you've seen in deep blue states in years. She won New York by 12 points. Biden won New York by 23. Clinton won it by 22. Obama won it by almost 30. Obama won it by 26, and she won it by 12.5. Look at California. Harris won it by 20 points. Go back to Biden. Biden won it by almost 30 points. Go back to Hillary Clinton. She won it by 30 points. Go back to Barack Obama, 23 points. 2008, he won it by 24. Biden, huge margin of victory in the state. Huge margin of victory. You saw it's like, look at this. New Jersey, 6 points. Virginia, 6 points. Connecticut, 15 points. Go back to 2020. Look at Connecticut. That's a Biden plus 20 state. Look at Illinois, 11 points. Go back to Biden, 17 points. You saw her perform some of the worst in these deep blue states. Wow, she lost Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. She lost all of the swing states. And now she is contemplating running for governor in 2026. And we actually had a video that went out today about that, because we know Gavin Newsom is term limited. Gavin Newsom is desperate to be the next president. He is most likely going to be jumping in the 28 presidential race for the Democrats. But she's expected sometime this summer to come out and say, hey, if she's running or not. We've already seen some other high-profile figures jump in that governor's race. There was a Biden administration official who recently just jumped in the race. So we're expected something by late summer of this year, whether she's going to jump in that California Democrat primary. Now, among Democrats in the 2028 presidential election, and I should say the primary, Kamala Harris time and time again is polling the best. Time and time again, she is polling the best. And we're going to get all the aggregate of it down here. Let's see. Opinion poll. The aggregate right now is that Kamala Harris is leading all of her opponents by roughly 20 points. Here we're looking, I believe this is a morning consult poll that just came out within the last week or two. And that Democrats and Democrat-leaning independents said they would support Kamala Harris, 36%. Next up, you had Pete Buttigieg, AOC, Tim Walz, with a roughly 13% saying don't know or no opinion, and 2% saying someone else, which, to be honest, isn't a lot. I would have expected a little bit more of a either someone else or I don't know, no opinion. As of right now, let's see how this race is going to develop. But like we said, she is polling the highest among the Democrats. Every poll that's come out since the election, since she lost the election, has shown her leading in the primary. Even leading up from the election to the inauguration, and even before that, she was leading all of them. In the theory, and this is the thing that we really want to deconstruct real quick, is there is this theory that is held by the Democrat Party as to why it is a good idea to run Kamala Harris again in 2026. Their thought process, their theory behind it, is that more time on the campaign trail plus a full primary process would have helped Kamala Harris in the general election. And I am here to absolutely 1000% disagree with that conclusion. I disagree more than you can possibly understand. I believe that with more time on the campaign trail and the full primary process, she would be bruised very badly. More time on the campaign trail would have exposed how inept she truly is. The Democrats and the media were able to hide her. They were able to edit different clips of her. They were able to, if they had an interview with her, they could just kind of rearrange everything she said to make it sound, halfway coherent. We thought she sounded very unintelligent the way, in the edited version. Then you listen to the unedited version and you're like, who the hell is this lady? And why is she the 50-50 coin toss to be the next president of the United States? I truly don't believe. I don't think they could keep it up. I don't think the media could keep this charade up for 2 years. Honest to God, do not think they could keep this charade up. Similar to Biden, how they covered for him. They covered for him for years and years and years. And now they want to come out, maybe he was in decline. Yeah, we were saying that back in 2020 before he even won the 2020 election. But you guys covered up for him. You lied to us. And that's why nobody trusts the mainstream media. They're going to be irrelevant. The only mainstream media people watch is Fox News. But Biden, like we said, they said he was mentally sharp, went out and laid that turd on the debate stage in the summer of 2024. Just really showed them up there. But ultimately, Kamala Harris is leading, and I totally disagree with the theory behind why she would be a good candidate in 2028. So now, that is going to move us on to the next wonderful candidate that we could see in this race. And really, the person who appears to be the new leader of the Democrat Party. It's like, I truly agree with this. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of the great state of New York. She, like we said, appears to be the new leader of the Democrat Party. And we actually, and I should have had this pulled up, and I'm sorry I didn't, but there's a new poll that came out from Atlas that really kind of blew my mind. That I think really solidifies the fact that a lot of people agree and see her as the new leader of the Democrat Party. You can see right here, this is a poll from Atlas Intel within the last month. Do you have a positive or negative image of the following politician? AOC has the highest favorability rating among Democrats that don't have the last name Obama. Barack and Michelle scored above her, but that's it. That's it. She was the highest favorability rating of a Democrat. It is insane. This show. She is the new leader of the Democrat Party. And you have to give her some kudos because she has seized on the moment. AOC seized on the moment when the Democrat Party, in response to, there was going to be a government shutdown. And top Democrat senators came out and said that they were going to allow the GOP to pass their continuing resolution to fund the government through the end of September of this year. In that process, which Democrats were just furious, rank and file Democrats were furious at the top, about 9 or 10 senators, Democrat senators, who voted to invoke cloture so that the Senate could move forward and pass this continuing resolution. They were pissed. The Democrat Party, the actual rank and file, the voters were mad because they feel that the Democrats, over 60% of Democrats, believe that the Democrat Party should be fighting tooth and nail Donald Trump at every step of the way. Every step of the way. And she has been able to capture this energy from inside the Democrat Party that wants this. And she has been rewarded for it and has been elevated to really be the leader of the resistance to Donald Trump and Republicans in Congress. She has been elevated there. And now she may be able to deliver a few, rehearsed lines and get some attention on social media. But let's talk about this honestly. Running for president is a completely different game. Plus, a recent poll came out showing that she was leading in the New York Senate primary. The New York Senate primary, which is just insane. Against Chuck Schumer. Let's see if I can find that real quick. Where's my... I might be in my bookmarks right now. They came out and they did a poll. on the New York primary. Let's see. New York Senate primary. Let's see if we can find that. That had come out right here. From Data for Progress, AOC in a Senate primary poll was leading Chuck Schumer by 19 points. You have people publicly and internally calling for Chuck Schumer to step down or for Chuck Schumer to be replaced by AOC. Now, I don't think that will ever happen. The shadiness of Democrat politics in New York, it's horrible. I don't think AOC, if Schumer wants to win, he'll win. He'll get the votes that he needs. I don't have any doubt about it. But the reality is, like we said, it is very different to go on Twitter and record yourself calling Elon Musk what did she say?
One of the most unintelligent billionaires I have ever met.
Yeah, one of the most unintelligent billionaires you've ever met. Okay, lady, because 5 or 6 years ago, you guys were praising him as, really the king. He was the king when it came to renewable energy. But now because you disagree with a couple of his policies and he supported Donald Trump instead of your propaganda machine, you're mad at him. And, that makes sense. It makes sense why. But here's the thing. She's a self-described Democrat socialist. Good luck with that. Good luck winning a general election when you describe yourself as a Democrat socialist. Like honestly, good luck. I really struggle to see that happen. And I think even someone like a Bernie Sanders I think Bernie Sanders has a much more common sense approach. Even though I disagree with most of his policies, he has a much more common sense approach to these policies. She is just, cannot stand her. She's annoying. I can't listen to her. I'd rather listen to RFK Jr. talk for an hour than AOC for 5 minutes. And that's saying a lot about AOC. And we know she is a huge, huge advocate for the Green New Scam, Medicare for All. And many established Democrats have called a run by her disastrous. People like Hillary Clinton have ripped on AOC, saying it would be disastrous if she was the head of the party. She may have a strong base of supporters, but appealing to swing voters in places like Michigan, in places like Wisconsin, places like Pennsylvania, is going to be very, very difficult. How are you going to appeal to these voters? That's the reality. We know Dane County, Harris is going to win Dane County, or AOC would win Dane County. But can you win in Vernon County, Crawford County, Richland County? These are the counties that really matter. Can you win up in Brown County? Can you win in Kenosha and Racine County? That is the reality here. Can they win here? This is where the Democrats, if the Democrats want to win Wisconsin, these are the districts that they need to flip. That's just the reality of it. But she, like I said, she may have a big base of supporters. And to be honest, she is going to be the new face of the Bernie Sanders wing of the party. There's no doubt about that. She is Bernie Sanders' basically handpicked replacement at this point. She is going to have power and control over a large constituency of the Democrat Party. Do I think that the establishment Democrats will allow that portion of the base party to take over? I don't think so, but I think it is a growing portion. I think that they're going to have the establishment Democrats are going to struggle to keep them bottled up. We know they did it in 2016. Bernie Sanders was mounting a pretty competitive campaign to Hillary Clinton, and the superdelegates came in and basically squashed that. They did the same thing to Bernie in 2020 when he was running. He was running for president, and it looked like he was doing really, really well. And then all of the party coalesced behind Joe Biden. I think that the establishment Democrats are going to roll in their graves if they allow that to happen. They will destroy the Democrat Party before they allow the left wing like AOC to take over. Even though Kamala Harris is pretty left wing, it's like AOC is a lot worse than Kamala Harris. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Good luck going to Pennsylvania and Michigan and convincing the people there that we need to ban fracking. Good luck with that. They didn't buy it when Kamala Harris was selling it. They just didn't. But next on to our next contender, we have Mr. Gavin Newsom. Newsom has been polling roughly, and let's get into this opinion polling. Let's see. The opinion polling here has him roughly at about an 8% aggregate polling. He's topped out as high as 9%. We can see here in a poll goes as low as 4% in a poll. So, and we're still so far out. A lot could change when you get into an actual primary. He hasn't even announced his intentions to run. We know he's desperate. You can see it, how desperate he is in his new podcast that he started. He is so desperate. It is just seeping out of his eyes and his face. You can just see how desperate he is to be the next president of the United States. And we know Newsom, he's got great name recognition, mainly from his strong opposition to Trump during his first presidency, but also as a Democrat who's willing to work across the aisle and be friendly. You saw it time and time again. And he's a paper tiger. He puffs up and tries to act like a tough guy. But we know he's not. We know he's a paper tiger. That's just the reality. And he garnered a lot of national attention on many occasions, but most notably as a lead-in figure in the Democrat Party during the COVID pandemic. He locked down his state for longer than almost any other state government did. He abused the rights of individuals and parents in the state of California. And he was known as one of those dirty five governors that forced nursing homes to take COVID-positive patients and put them into their nursing homes with the most vulnerable individuals in our society. We sent in a virus that was, not deadly to the majority of Americans, to healthy Americans. But if you were immunocompromised, if you had underlying conditions, there were serious complications that could come along with COVID. We know that. And what did he do? He sent the people into the nursing homes. It's just sick what he did. And we all know Newsom is gearing up for a presidential run because he is one of the few Democrats who is actually trying to look in the mirror after the last election and say, hey, what did we do wrong? Everyone else is just saying, nope, it was a messaging issue. Our policies are perfect. Our policies are supported by the masses. He is actually looking in the mirror. And I think he's coming to the wrong conclusions at the end of the day. No doubt about it. But the reality of Gavin Newsom is he's looking in the mirror, but he is completely botching it. And in a podcast with conservative influencer Charlie Kirk recently, he finally admitted that these radical policies regarding transgender athletes are not right. They aren't right. Listen to this.
The young man who's about to, so like you right now should come out and be like, you know what? The young man who's about to win the state championship in the long jump in female sports, right. that shouldn't happen. You as the governor should step out and say no.
No, and I appreciate.
But like, would you do something like that? Would you say no men in female sports?
Well, I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that. So that's easy.
He completely agrees with you? What? This is the guy that signed some of the most radically progressive transgender bills into law, period. He's turned California into this transgender haven, protecting access to, and should I say, I'm not going to say the gender with the M word afterwards, because then Google's going to they're going to try and come after me, but the gender reassignment surgeries, the hormones, the puberty blockers. He made sure that the youth have access to this. Don't even tell me about unfairness. You made laws that required that school districts require that sports teams allow people based on their gender identity, not based on their biological reality. And here's the thing about Gavin Newsom. I think that Newsom could have a good chance, if he actually was running, I think he would have a good chance to win the primary. I think he's going to really try the next 2 years to do this kind of pseudo-moderate approach and become this moderate, which I think it could blow up in his face. But I think he's going to try and become this pseudo-moderate and be the moderate with inside the party. He's going to have to run to the left on certain issues, but I think there are some things where he's going to try and act like this pseudo-moderate. And he's got a lot of money. He's got a lot of money and big donors that are going to be willing to back him. But I think he would struggle. I really do, because he is a California West Coast elitist in the crucial swing states like Michigan, Wisconsin. Now, like I said, let me separate the two. I think he would do good in a primary. I think in a general election, I think he would really struggle. I think he would struggle to compete in places like Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. You look at these states that are going to be so crucial in 2028. We're looking forward to 2028. Where are the battlegrounds? The battlegrounds are going to be probably the same as they were before. We know, Hawaii, California, New Mexico, Colorado, Oregon, Washington. These aren't going to be up for debate. They're not. Just like Utah, Idaho, all these, they're not going to be up for debate here. But the reality is, is although those states might not be up for debate, the states that will be are basically going to be the same ones. You're looking at Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. You know, the party is going to coalesce behind, you know, whoever the nominee is in these states here. Oops, and I didn't mean that. But good luck winning in Georgia. Good luck winning in North Carolina. Yeah, you tell us how that your Hollywood coastal elitist is working out for you there. But like I said, very likely he jumps in this race. He's desperate to be the next president. We're going to see what happens here. But that is going to move on to the self-described knucklehead, the guy who has apparently made friends with school shooters and is currently on a nationwide tour everywhere except his own home state, where when he goes there, he gets the hell booed out of him. And that would be the wonderful governor of my home state of Minnesota, Tim Walz, the complete moron. Just take a listen to this.
Welcome to the welcome to the Capitol. It's great that you're here. Sir, you're welcome to come. Let me finish. Let me finish.
Well, at least the veterans in Minnesota knows what is up. But we are looking at Tim Walz in this election now. Now, Tim Walz, he's polled somewhere in the ballpark of about 5%, 3, 4, 5. He's even as high as 9% in one poll that they have for him. But we know, it's like, what more do I need to say about Tim Walz? I've covered him very heavily on this channel. He is probably the reason Kamala Harris did so bad in these swing states and lost every single one. Because most people felt that Josh Shapiro would have been the better choice. And to be honest, I agree with that. Shapiro won Pennsylvania, a swing state, by 15 points. Granted, it was a good year for Democrats in that election, no doubt about it. When you saw Whitmer win re-election by 10 points, Evers win re-election by 3.5 points, and Katie Hobbs win by a very small margin. But you saw Shapiro win by 15 points. Tim Walz won Minnesota by like 7. That's nothing real popular. It's like he expanded his margin a little bit. Harris won the state by 4 points. Trump won Pennsylvania by 1.7 points. Who would have been more deadly? Josh Shapiro or Tim Walz? And Tim Walz is the definition of a progressive beta male. You wonder why the Democrat Party is struggling so much with young men right now? It's because they're elevating men like Tim Walz for younger generations to look up to. And let's just face the reality. Most men do not resonate with Tim Walz. And, you know, most people do not want their wife to be the alpha in a relationship. And you see it time and time again. His wife just got his balls in her pocket. And you know, and the reality is Tim Walz has said that if he feels like he has something to offer, he's going to run. But Tim Walz has a lot of liabilities that could hurt the Democrat Party in 2028. You know, people want a president who is focused on helping the working class, not putting tampons in boys' bathrooms. And definitely not someone who allowed rioters and thugs to take over his city and burn it down. Let's just look at the reality. But I've got a theory. You know, let's talk about Josh Shapiro. Josh Shapiro have any better chance? Why did she pick the progressive beta male, Tim Walz? And I've got two theories that actually kind of play into each other and can both be true at the same time. Theory number one is Kamala Harris needed a dumber vice president than she was. We've seen it happen for the last 20 years in the Democrat Party. It started with Barack Obama, highly intelligent. He's like, you know, I cannot have a vice president who's going to outshine me, so he picks Joe Biden. Joe Biden, obviously, they passed him over in 2016, picked Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton lost to Trump in 2016. Fast forward to 2020, Biden's leading the Democrat ticket. He's like, the same thing that Obama said. I need a vice president who's not going to outshine me, who's almost like an insurance policy against an impeachment. So who does he pick? He picks Kamala Harris of the shitty state of California because of all the poop they have all around. You know, you can go on that app where they track all the poop that's on all the different streets in California. But anyways, he picked Kamala Harris. I can't have a vice president who's going to outshine me. What does Kamala Harris do? She looks in the mirror and says, look, I need to continue this. I need a vice president who is an insurance policy. Someone who is not going to outshine me. So she picks the beta male, Tim Walz. That's theory number one. Theory number two is that Josh Shapiro just passed it over. He said, hell no. He said, absolutely not. Are you kidding me? Is this a joke? It is a joke to think that you want me. And maybe, and I guess the third one you can throw in there is that the extreme left wing of the party would not allow a Jewish man at the top of the ticket. Like let's just accept a reality that a large portion of the Democrat Party is very anti-Semitic. I don't know if they would have been able to survive if they put a Jewish man, a white, straight Jewish man who is more moderate at the top of the ticket. My guess is even if they offered it to Shapiro, he said no. He said, get the hell away from me. I don't want anything to do with this. Your campaign's going to implode. Because look at that. Trump. Then you look at the governor's race. Shapiro. Like, that's a no-brainer you pick him. And so, speaking of Josh Shapiro, moving on to Josh Shapiro. Josh Shapiro has polled roughly in the ballpark of about 4%. We've seen him anywhere from about 2 to 6%, or 7% in the poll. And really, what the polling has showed us with Josh Shapiro is that he may be one of the smartest Democrats on the planet because of his refusal to be the vice president for Kamala Harris. I have no doubt in my mind, like we talked about those theories, that he was offered this position and turned it down. And I just can't believe that the Democrats would have chose Tim Walz over Josh Shapiro. Maybe Kamala Harris chose Tim Walz over Josh Shapiro, but ultimately I think that Josh Shapiro declined the offer, declined the position. Here's the reality. Shapiro is well-spoken. He won his race by almost 15 points in a swing state and is very, very popular in that state. No way Democrats didn't offer him that. When you were looking at the race in 2016 or 2024, this is kind of what the race looked like. And now I'm not, doing any lean or anything like that here. I'm just doing Democrat-Republican state. But this is kind of where people had assumed the race was at. You could have made the case Trump carries. There was people even saying that Harris could have carried Nevada, but Trump carries Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina. The Democrats carried these two states, and that leads it up to Pennsylvania. Donald Trump wins, he's the president. Kamala Harris wins, she's the president. So when so many theories were rotating around this idea that Pennsylvania was going to be this like domino that was right in the middle, that whichever way it fell was the way the presidency was going to go. It is just like that was the theory from a lot of people, that this is what the election was going to look like. Even if Trump, was carrying Nevada, you still need Pennsylvania. Democrats win it, that puts them right at 270. Republicans win it, they're over the margin then. But I just have such a hard time when this was the main theory that people were talking about, that they didn't look at Josh Shapiro and like, yep. And so he obviously had to turn it down. They were stuck with Tim Walz at the end of the day because Shapiro is a much more moderate. He's a moderate Democrat relative to the overall party. He supported school choice. He supports natural gas developments and fracking, and adopted relatively tough on crime policies for the Democrat Party. But he would have been pulled so far to the left if he had to run. And in a Democrat primary, he would be pulled so far to the left. And that's why I have a hard time seeing him running in 2028, is simply the fact that he would be pulled so far to the left. And the extreme left wing of the party would really lambaste him for being Jewish. There's a huge pro-Hamas wing of the Democrat Party who would not vote for him. The people who were calling Joe Biden Genocide Joe. Those are the people that you have to look out for when you're someone like Josh Shapiro. And in the downside is also that he doesn't have a lot of name recognition. Outside of being thrown around as, a vice presidential candidate, he really doesn't have a lot of name recognition outside of Pennsylvania. And I think that could hurt him in a primary and the ability to fundraise properly. But I also think, like we said, the extreme left wing will not allow a Jewish man to be on the top of the ticket. It's just as simple as that. And now we are going to move on to the wonderful state of Michigan, where you have Gretchen Whitmer, the incumbent governor of Michigan, who is term limited in 2026. Came out and said she is not going to be running for the open Senate seat. Gary Peters retired. She is not running for that open Senate seat. She has her eyes set on 2028. There is no doubt about this. She has her eyes set on 2028. We saw she was in the White House just a couple days ago discussing. She's taking a much different approach than many other Democrats are taking, because she went to the White House. She was there talking about how maybe she didn't agree with the way Trump rolled out his tariffs, but she agrees with tariffs to level the playing field with China. Listen to her here. Oh, and this is only a 3-second video. Listen.
The tariffs. And I can tell you, here's where President Trump and I do agree, and the motivation behind the tariffs. And I can tell you, here's where President Trump and I do agree. We do need to make more stuff in America. More cars and chips. More steel and ships. We do need fair trade. And the motivation behind.
Which, hey, if that's the way she wants to go about it, great. Good for her. But I also think that she carries, she may try and go across the aisle here to get some name recognition. And she was actually seen in the Oval Office. She was in the Oval Office with Trump, when he signed a couple executive orders relating to the 2020 election. But ultimately, she carries a lot of political baggage, especially when it comes to her response to the COVID pandemic. We want to talk about Gavin Newsom as one of those 5 governors. Well, one of the other governors in that 5 is Gretchen Whitmer. And ultimately, outside of the couple of days that she was on the national media due to potentially being a VP pick for Harris, she isn't really well known nationally. She would struggle to keep up with people like Gavin Newsom or Harris in a primary, solely based on fundraising and the ability to advertise your candidate, the ground game that she would have in place. Yeah. Does she have a good political machine, you could say, statewide in Michigan? Sure. Do I think that can be converted into national brownie points? I don't think so. I also don't think she's been truly tested by a well-funded opponent in her races. In 2018 and 2020 were good years for the Democrats and Democrats nationwide. Plus, she wasn't run against the strongest candidate in 2020. You could say 2018 was a stronger candidate, but 2020 wasn't a super strong candidate. She won by 10 points against Tudor Dixon and then against the former AG back in 2018. She won by about 9.5 points against the former Michigan Attorney General, which also wasn't a great year for Democrats. It just wasn't. You're looking at Michigan. Where did Trump win here? Trump flipped places a couple counties in here. You're looking at Muskogee. I wish I knew how to say that. But ultimately, I think that she hasn't had a true test. I think a primary would knock her off. A Democrat primary would knock her off. And then that brings us on to the former Secretary of Transportation, a homosexual, and someone who likes to play with choo-choo trains, Pete Buttigieg. He's the former mayor of South Bend. In this poll right here, you see him. The second highest Democrat polling is Pete Buttigieg at 10%. You're seeing in the selection, the aggregate, he has number 2 here, Pete Buttigieg at 10%. He's jumping anywhere between 10, 11, 9, 12%, 13% in these races or in these polls. He is the former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, who he gained a ton of national attention in the 2020 Democrat primary when he won the Iowa caucus barely and came in a close second in the New Hampshire Iowa caucus New Hampshire primary, which really elevated him to a national spotlight, which eventually the party coalesced behind Joe Biden. He dropped out and was rewarded by dropping out with being the Secretary of Transportation under Joe Biden, and probably being one of the worst Secretary of Transportations we've ever seen. He implemented DEI policies, stopped hiring people based on merit. We saw thousands of vacancies within the FAA that allowed really horrible things to happen on their watch. You saw the train derailments in East Palestine, Ohio. What did they do? They did nothing for them. You saw the same thing in northern Minnesota and in North Dakota. What did they do? Nothing. And like we said, he had a good showing in 2020. And do I think he could have a good showing in 2028? Absolutely. And I also think that, initially it looked like he was going to potentially be gearing up for a Senate bid in Michigan because, there's an open Senate race and there's also a open governor's race in Michigan right now, but ultimately came out and said, hey, I'm not running here. His eyes are set on 2028. Came out, made some big announcement that, hey, this is it. He didn't say he's running in 2028, but he basically did. Without saying it, he basically said it. And that's just the reality, is he's got his eyes set on it. And looking at a 2024 election, or excuse me, 2028 election, you can see here a J.D. Vance. How does he show against someone like Kamala Harris? J.D. Vance polling by about a point or two against Kamala Harris in these early polls, but polling ahead of people like Gavin Newsom, ahead of people like Josh Shapiro, ahead of people like Gretchen Whitmer. Ultimately, a lot is undecided, and a lot is going to come down to how Donald Trump performs and what the Democrat response is. A lot of what the Democrat primary is going to look like is simply going to be the response that the Democrats have to the Republican Party. That is going to be a huge part of it. And you can see here, Democrats are going to prioritize. They're already saying in polls, this is a YouGov poll, that they are prioritizing electability over actual policy. They want a nominee who can win the general election, not necessarily someone who agrees with your positions most of the time. Meanwhile, Republicans want someone who is in policy agreement, but yet maybe doesn't have the best shot at winning a general election, which I think that's a gamble to take. I think there is upsides to both. And a lot of it's just going to depend. How was Donald Trump able to perform over the next 4 years? How was he able to enact his domestic agenda? Through the reconciliation process, lowering corporate taxes, continue to give middle class huge tax breaks, renew the Trump tax cuts from 2017. There is huge political liabilities that are not liabilities, but X factors that you have to take into account here. How was Trump able to reorient portion of the world trade over the next 4 years? 4 years is a short period to reorient trade. But how was he able to do it? How is deregulation efforts going to work? And like we said, how is Donald Trump going to be able to perform is going to be a lot of this primary here. But ultimately, we know the Democrats are vying for 2028. They are desperate to win back the election, to win back the presidency in 2028. We know it time and time again. They've proven to us that they are desperate to win back the presidency. They can't sleep at night knowing that Donald Trump is the president right now. They are ripping their hair out at the thought that Donald Trump is president. It is insane, but we're going to see how this all plays out, and maybe some dark horse candidates that you could see in this race. People like Stephen A. Smith. I think there is something to be said with Stephen A. Smith, and we're going to actually talk about that in a video over the next week or two, talking about Stephen A. Smith. You kind of take that same angle that Donald Trump took. You're this outside, not a politician, someone who just kind of says what they speak and speaks what they mean. I think there's political benefits to that, but we're going to see what happens. But this is going to wrap this up for today. Let me know down in the comments down below, what are your thoughts? Who do you think is going to be the Democrat presidential nominee in 2028? Let me know your thoughts down below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Don't miss another video from us again in the future, and we will catch you next time.